Welcome to Earth911 Sustainability in Your Ear. We're back to have another conversation with a change maker working to accelerate the transition to a sustainable carbon neutral society. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe. Toys play a part in climate change because of their carbon footprints, but their designs can also influence kids to embrace responsible environmental practices. Playing at sustainable living can create lifelong habits. We're joined today by Pam Gil-Alabaster, Global Head of Sustainability and Social Impact at Mattel, the largest toy maker in the world. They make Barbie dolls, Hot Wheels, American Girl dolls, and more than 150 other brands of toys. Mattel recently announced a new plan to reduce its use of plastic packaging and to increase its use of recycled and recyclable bio-based materials in packaging by 2030. The company will also lower its Scope 1 and 2 greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2030, and it's aiming to eliminate manufacturing waste by the end of the decade as well. If you've unwrapped a toy or a game, you're familiar with the plastic poly bags, blister packs, and plastic window sheets that are typically unrecyclable and end up in the trash. Mattel now uses 97.9% recycled or Forest Stewardship Council certified paper and wood fiber in its products, and has also increased the use of recycled plastic in its packaging to 30% of the materials used overall. It's integrating bio-based plastic into its designs as well. They recently launched a novel toy take-back program, Mattel PlayBack, a free recycling program available in the United States, Britain, and Germany, as well as France and Canada. Mattel has committed to sustainable design practices, responsible sourcing and production processes, and support of inclusive communities across its many lines of business. So there's a lot to discuss here, and let's get started. You can learn more about Mattel at mattel.com. Welcome to the show, Pam. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thank you, Mitch. Happy to be here.
Well, thank you. And it's great to have a conversation with a company that has such broad cultural influence as Mattel. Let me start by asking, what drove Mattel's environmental commitments? Was it an internal recognition of the urgent need to respond to climate change, or were customers asking for this as responsible alternatives, or both?
Well, I think it's both and then more. Certainly, let's even start with employees who today, as you probably know, want to work for companies that demonstrate their values and live their values. And so we have a really engaged and passionate, I would say, employee base that feels really proud of the work we're doing. Certainly, a lot of the other key initiatives and goals that we've set aligned with our strategy are motivated by other business drivers. Consumers being sort of the last to come to the party, but for sure our key customers, all of whom, especially the big ones, have very significant ambitions around climate and waste and materials use and regeneration. I think the regulatory landscape has changed a lot in the last 5 to 7 years, such that manufacturers are being held accountable for things like the amount of packaging they put into the marketplace through extended producer responsibility laws. And I think we also see shifts in our supply chain. So there's a lot of motivators for us to do this work, but ultimately, we recognize we have a responsibility to be a good steward of the environment and to lead by example.
Well, that kind of organic emergence of the sustainability initiatives also creates interesting challenges in driving a shared practice and set of commitments across an entire company. What have you done internally to evangelize the overall strategy and commitments that you're trying to accomplish so that everybody's working towards the same goal?
Yeah, so a really great question, because my responsibility is just not to develop the vision and the strategy and the implementation plans, but also to build capabilities and knowledge and a common understanding of not only what do we aim to achieve, but how do we get there. And so we've implemented a variety of initiatives, trainings. We have a webinar series called the ESG webinar series, and we've had top content topics like how nature solves for design challenges with the Biomimicry Institute, A World Without Waste, which Tom Zaki led a very engaging webinar on from TerraCycle on that. Andrew Winston conducted a webinar on leading toward a net positive future. And then we've done much more targeted trainings. One of the important concepts that we wanted to embed in our across our organization was circular design principles. And so we worked with IDEO and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation really to conduct a series of workshops over a period of time with our global brand and marketing teams, with our design and development teams, with our procurement teams, finance, and global supply chain, building sort of the knowledge and the understanding of what circular economy is and how do we design for it. And it doesn't stop there. It's also about giving the organization the tools that they need, not just the training. And so we're implementing now a life cycle assessment tool for packaging so that our packaging engineers can design for better. And, it's, we believe in continuous learning, and we're early days in the journey, but really committed to upskilling the entire organization. One other thing, we held an ESG boot camp for our executive team as well, with a variety of speakers across actually 11 topics, a full day, offsite to immerse them in, again, building a common understanding of what is sustainability, what is ESG, and what are the important concepts that they need to understand as we drive progress forward.
Well, let me ask about particularly how you've set your GHG emissions goals. What are they? We summarized it very briefly in the introduction. You're headed for 50% reductions by 2030, but how are you communicating that, and particularly addressing Scope 3 emissions in your supply chain? Do you need suppliers to open the kimono more, to share more data in order for that to be a tractable problem for you to solve?
So let me start with the goal. The goal is a 50% reduction of Scope 1 and 2 emissions by 2030 off a baseline of 2019. And we used the science-based target calculator, so we know that the Scope 1 and 2 emissions is aligned with the 1.5 degrees Celsius target for, aligned with the Paris Agreement. We have not yet implemented Scope 3. We're currently assessing the 15 categories to understand, clearly, like most manufacturing companies, most of our impacts are going to be upstream in our value chain, and certainly downstream as well. And suppliers are going to have to be part of the process. And some are more sophisticated than others. Some are collecting, energy consumption data and fuel use, Scope 1 data, and others aren't. So I imagine, Mitch, like many other companies who are facing this challenge, especially thinking toward SEC's new proposed disclosure rules around climate, that there's going to be, a combination of both primary data and some modeling and secondary data used to get to a good understanding of our Scope 3 emissions, and then have the ability to set an appropriate target aligned with science-based targets.
So as you work on particularly the design for circularity, how does that reshape the experience of buying and playing with Mattel products over the next few years? What kinds of changes should parents who are thinking about a toy for the next Christmas season be looking for from Mattel? More sustainability, more stories they can tell their kids about the fact that Barbie is made from ocean plastic that was recovered?
So in fact, a couple different levers that we have as a toy designer, developer, and manufacturer. The first is, can we design for better? And,
Yeah.
looking at principles of circular economy, can we reduce the amount of materials we use in both product and packaging? Can we use better materials, replace the virgin types of fossil fuel derived materials with renewable materials? Can we design for reuse and repair so that we can keep products in the cycle longer? And then when products or packages have met the end of their useful life, can they be designed such that the valuable materials are recoverable and then ultimately reusable? So toys are designed to be inherently durable. Kids play pretty hard.
Yeah.
So you won't usually find that a toy has reached the end of its life because of its durability. It's often because the child developmentally outgrows whatever the play pattern is. And so couple other sort of initiatives that we've introduced, and we'll probably talk about it a little bit more here, is PlayBack, which is a toy take-back program that invites parents to have a responsible end-of-life solution to toys that are no longer loved or outgrown, and they can mail them back to us, and we are sorting and separating those toys, none of which will go to landfill. The lowest sort of option is waste to energy, but we are actually able to recover and sort, separate material by type, and then either downcycle it. We're also doing a fair amount of testing on the materials that for future potential reuse in toys. So that's one additional sort of new model around circularity. But the other thing that I think it's important to understand is that play really helps kids make meaning out of the world around them. And it helps them develop, emotional and social skills, imagination, creativity, and important cognitive and communication and problem-solving skills. And it gives them the tools that they need to become successful adults. We use not just toys, but also we leverage our platforms to help inform and inspire. And for example, the Mega Green Towns line, which we introduced, which integrates, by the way, ISCC Mass Balance certified sustainable plastic.
Oh, and the kids love that.
Yeah, but it also has, it supports greener play patterns. What is it like to grow up on a organic farm? How do you recycle? There's an incredible Matchbox recycling vehicle that we made also with recycled content. And, it helps weave in and integrate more sustainable behaviors so that kids grow up understanding that this is the new normal. This is, the life in the future that we're going to grow up in.
I think that's the most important element of this conversation because, when I think back to what shaped my life, three toys did. One was G.I. Joe, which, relatively speaking, wasn't necessarily the direction I wanted society to go. But then the others were Major Matt Mason, which was an astronaut play set, and Star Trek toys. And it's really interesting to see Barbie working on things like the Future of Pink is Green program. Tell us about how that campaign evolved and what's kind of storytelling you're doing about sustainability for kids who play with Barbie.
Yeah, so happy to. Barbie obviously has been at the forefront of a lot of cultural conversations, including, diversity and inclusion, with probably the most diverse doll line on the planet. But the Future of Pink is Green, the campaign, it really leverages Barbie's iconic association with pink to communicate this next step toward a greener future. And the first product launched under this campaign was Barbie Loves the Ocean. There was a blog introduced how Barbie shares hacks on how we can protect the planet. There was a YouTube series in Barbie vlogs, which helped to teach fans about the importance of taking care of the planet. And online, the brand also, had a bunch of content and content partners. They partnered with 4Ocean to create a limited edition signature bracelet, which was assembled by artisans in Bali, and it, made for every bracelet sold, there was material extracted from what would have ultimately been ocean bound.
Right.
So Barbie looks for ways to really connect its culture driving platform to drive positive environmental and social change, and to inspire and educate kids to be part of the solution.
And is that principle driving design practices from the very beginning now? Is environmental responsibility factored into, for instance, Matchbox, where you've got an EV, like the carbon neutral Matchbox Tesla Roadster? Are your designers thinking about explicitly shaping the future of kids' expectations?
Yeah, and the future of play, for sure. Not just in the material choice that we make in the design and development of the product and or the package, but on the play pattern. Matchbox for, I think, 70 some odd years really has been dedicated to helping kids explore the world around them through authentic vehicle play. So the cars represent cars that are on the street. And what we've seen now is our designers really shifting more of the portfolio of die-cast toward e-vehicles, again, to reflect the world that we are transitioning toward, less combustion engine vehicles and more e-vehicles. And so their action driver play sets are also made with recycled content. Mm-hmm. As I mentioned, the recycling truck earlier. And it's really about, reflecting the world that we think children are going to grow up in, and giving them the stories and the narrative of what a better future looks like.
That narrative can be so powerful. I need to take a quick commercial break. We're going to be right back to continue talking. We're back to continue the conversation with Mattel's Global Head of Sustainability and Social Impact, Pam Gil-Alabaster. So, following up on what we were talking about just before the break, you've also integrated diversity and inclusion with environmental issues into the design of toys and play. How does Mattel view the convergence of these themes? Do they create more opportunity for personalized human and planet positive play? And when you begin a design process, what are the first conversations about how to do that?
So, in fact, we do have a governance structure, and have conducted sort of training for design and development teams around conscious inclusion and design representation and inclusion and accessibility. And I think it's sort of natural to us that we have a perspective on toy innovation, and it's driven by purposeful play, so that each product and experience is designed to deliver intrinsic value that inspires, entertains, and develops kids. And our purpose statement as a company, to empower children to explore the wonder of childhood and realize their full potential. We can't achieve that purpose if we don't develop toys that are better for the planet and that represent the kids that play with them. So it's sort of built into our DNA. And I mentioned earlier, even in our in our Barbie line, which is probably the most diverse doll line on the planet, but even across our organization, I don't know if you saw the action figure Sunman that we introduced this past year. A beautiful story about a mother who felt her son couldn't see himself as an action hero because none of them looked like him. Yeah. And so she created this character, which then Mattel brought to life and, created a toy around. And we did some research, and it was really moving to watch children see action heroes that looked like them, and how, what they felt like. It was really, it's really extraordinary. So we think about it consciously at the very beginning of the design and development process. Who is the child that's intended to play with this? Do they have physical or emotional or mental disabilities or challenges that we need to consider in the design and the development? Will the child feel it looks like them? Yeah. So it's really integrated from the very beginning, and there's plenty of examples, in our Little People, in Fisher Price, in Mega Blocks, in the Block Buddy characters. And it's really been integrated as a principle across the entire organization, not just in the products, but also in the way we operate it in a workplace, creating, a culture of inclusion where people feel like they belong and are valued and respected.
Well, and the storytelling you do around the products, it does a great job of creating that integrated view of the world. And you have such power. I mean, Barbie has a movie coming out with major stars that is going to obviously be an impact on culture. How do you also bring in the stories, such as with Mega Blocks? You've got a carbon neutral line of the product now that is a story into itself. Do you, when you package that and when you design the opening the box experience, build a story in there about the sustainability of the product the kid's about to play for? Is that something that is appropriate at this point, or is it aimed at parents instead?
No, it's both. It's
okay.
Both. We communicate with both parents and with kids. So the packaging badge is clearly, carbon neutral product certification. FSC paperboard is used. It's plastic free, the packaging. And I think it's the first signal that this is a product that's better for the planet. But then as you open the toy, you really get the sense of we're building a real life play scenario that gives kids exposure to, what does a solar panel on a house look like? What does a wind turbine look like?
First time they probably see it, yeah.
Yeah. And, creating a new normal around what the future of a sustainable and inclusive planet will look like.
Now, tell us more about the PlayBack program, because that really is a great move. The idea that you're taking responsibility and will take back for free the products you sell.
So we launched the program a year ago in May, and we launched it in 5 markets. PlayBack is designed across 3 brands, and we just expanded that to Fisher Price this year. Mm-hmm. PlayBack was designed to give parents a guilt-free, responsible way to dispose of their toys at their end of their life. And I mentioned earlier that, we design toys to last a really long time and to endure rough child play. And so often the toy doesn't break or disintegrate. It's just outgrown. If
I've found a Barbie head in my backyard doing some art, and it was in good shape.
Yeah. And a lot of parents, will pass toys down to kids, neighbors, family, friends. In fact, that's often the second life of a well-made toy. And in some cases, in fact, the number statistically was quite high. It's like more than 50%. We did a piece of global research across 7 markets. More than 50% of adults still have a toy from their childhood. So could be for a variety of reasons, including sentimental, emotional reasons. The toy really, had an important role in their life and development. But so toys often don't reach, the end of their life in a very straightforward way. However, when they are ready to go somewhere, we don't want them to go to landfill. Right. We really believe that those materials are incredibly valuable, as you know. And so the PlayBack program invites consumers, parents, caregivers, grandparents, whomever, to go to our website, download a label and mail it back to us. And in different markets, we have different back-end collection approaches. This year, we're also testing retail collection and in-school collection programs. But it's really an opportunity for us to learn a couple different things. One is how to disassemble toys such that the materials could potentially in the future be recycled. If you have a polypropylene part, can that be easily separated, and is it big enough based on size to go into a regular municipal recycling facility or bin? Anyway, learning about assembly and disassembly, and then also what's coming back and in what shape, and which of the materials can be readily sorted, separated, cleaned, and then repelletized as material input for a future toy, and which of those should be downcycled into construction bricks or other applications. There's a lot of plastic that gets recycled, downcycled into park benches or playgrounds or things of that nature. So a lot of really good learning for us this year. We are, as I said, testing a lot of different variables, and it's not a silver bullet, but it certainly is a solution. And the holy grail for us will be, could we become in the future our own recycled feedstock supplier?
So the idea of teaching disassembly steps is really interesting, because as consumers, one of the things we can do in order to help the process work is take stuff apart. We try to convey that to folks asking questions about how to recycle at Earth911. One of the challenges that we're seeing in the recycling industry is that these new bio-based materials are not necessarily recyclable in the traditional stream. Are you looking at how to take your bio-based materials through a full life cycle, and does that potentially require mostly sending material back to you, or do you anticipate there will be a robust recycling process available for bio-based plastic in the future?
Yeah, not really anticipating the latter. We don't use a lot of I would say traditional bio-based materials. We use a lot of bio feedstocks, circular feedstocks that are integrated into like a mass balance recycled content through chemical recycling approaches. So hasn't been a challenge for us, and we've concertedly, intentionally chose not to go the compostable, biodegradable route, because as not many people have access to industrial composting, right, and the challenges with waste stream contamination. So in the design process, we're very intentional about the materials we choose to work with, and most of which today are either, PCR, mechanically recycled polymers, or mass balance, which, as you know, integrates some portion of virgin resin with some kind of recycled feedstock.
So do you see Mattel becoming a truly circular company that recycles everything that it makes, and taking responsibility for that stream through a mail-back program or some form of distributed local collection?
Well, I think there are a few approaches in the portfolio, Mitch. So one is, can you design for the product to be curbside recyclable? Right. Can you design for it to go through regular waste, municipal waste infrastructure streams, and in a manner that either because of monomaterial design or because of ease of disassembly, you can sort and separate parts and pieces that are big enough to go through regular, waste infrastructure. So that's one. The second is, can we design for repairability? We have American Girl doll has a doll hospital. So if you're little brother drew a Sharpie mustache on your doll,
it's happened at my house.
You can mail it back, and we will refurbish the doll's head and then, mail it back to you with this really cute hospital bracelet and hospital gown. But even in our on our consumer affairs or customer service website, you can order spare parts for almost a great portion of our toys, because kids lose parts to toys, and then it sometimes renders the toy less fun. Mm-hmm. So we have that right to repair approach as well. And then obviously PlayBack is the mail back approach scalable? Probably not, but a retail collection model could be.
Right.
So a combination of mail-in and retail. And then, it might be heresy to admit this, but, there are some type of toys that, or baby gear that developmentally children grow out of very quickly, that have potential for a second life. So are there sharing economy platforms? Mm-hmm. I listened with keen interest to one of your blogs with the eBay on, re-commerce and buying used. Mm-hmm. Is there not a model for toys that could safely redistribute, toys that have a second chance at being loved? And then lastly, are there some toy categories or products where maybe a subscription model would be interesting?
Well, and I've worked on tech projects where a subscription model would enable someone to care for a product for a while and pass it on effectively, and give the company that might manage that product through 3 or 4 different customers' lives the ability to capture the material back at the end. Now, of course, in technology, there's a lot of value in, for instance, a phone, $35 or $40 worth of raw materials value. What kind of incentives do you need to put in place, or could you even afford to put in place in order to drive the collection of all that much less valuable material on a volume basis in order to create that circular economy? That seems to me to be not an individual brand challenge, but an entire industry challenge. Does the toy industry understand that it could be truly circular, and is it starting to work together to accomplish that?
Yes, but not enough.
Okay.
No, and I think we, those of us who do this work and live this, these challenges, understand that we can't get there alone. That when we work in collaboration and through coalitions with upstream and downstream actors, and peers and competitors, we can go further faster. So I think there are definitely opportunity. I think, depending on price, the price of a product and its inherent long-term value, there are within the toy sector categories of toys that should have sort of the pre-owned certified model. Mm-hmm. There are others where it's just, let's have materials recovery. So I think there's more to be done there.
Well, there's obviously a lot more to this story, and we're looking forward to following it as it develops. Can you tell us how our listeners can keep track of what's up with Mattel and Barbie or their favorite brand over there?
Sure. Well, we have a corporate website. We have all of our social channels. We post pretty regularly on our LinkedIn and all of sort of the latest news and all of the latest initiatives. And our media team does a really good job. Our comms team does a really good job getting the story out. And also, you can find me on LinkedIn, Pamela Gil-Alabaster, and send me a message.
Well, Pam, thank you very much for talking with us today. We appreciate it.
Oh, no, thank you, Mitch. Really appreciate the opportunity.
We've been talking with Pam Gil-Alabaster. She's Mattel's Global Head of Sustainability and Social Impact. Well, folks, I think what we heard was really inspiring on a number of levels. First, the fact that this bubbled up organically from the employees at Mattel, as well as from the top down and from the customer community, all asking for the same basic goals and finding a way forward together. That's inspiring. It's important that we think about creating projects as companies like PlayBack, the recycling program we heard about, in order to encourage the development of a circular economy in the materials that we use to make our products. And as customers, we can participate in that by asking for recyclable materials, information about how to, as Pam shared, take apart a toy for successful recycling. You know what we can do is we can actually teach generations of parents and children to participate in the circular economy at the moment that they are playing and enjoying just being a child or just being a family, spending time together with some toys. So, this is our opportunity for change. It's a critical moment in human history when we can go from wasteful to waste-free, and hopefully we heard one of the steps today. This is Earth911 Sustainability in Your Ear. I hope you'll take a few minutes to share this podcast and all the others that we've done with your friends, family, your children. Let's all start talking about more ideas to create less waste. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe, your host. We're going to be back with another innovator interview soon. In the meantime, take care of yourself, take care of one another, and let's all take care of this beautiful planet of ours. I hope you have a green day.